Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024.
Mr. President-elect,
go ahead.
Can you state
She's
categorically?
asking a question.
Mr. President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You are
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a
question.
question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Dave versus the MSM. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for networking this information to anyone and everyone you know. The more people we have awakened, the more people we have empowered, and the more people we have putting pressure on the Syndicate so we can end this reign of terror that has been inflicted upon our country and the world for decades. You know, the Syndicate, the deep state, the New World Order crowd, the thugocracy, the globalists, the criminal international banking syndicate, whatever you want to call them, it's all the same. Their goal is to strip us of our freedoms and our liberties and our future, our lives, and our republic for those of us who live in the United States. And the speed bump that they have encountered is the United States Constitution. This is what the globalists despise. This is what they want to take apart. Because if they can take it apart, they end our republic. And we become members of their new dark age. So when the title of today's presentation is When All Else Fails, Subvert the Constitution. That's their game plan. That's the game plan that they've been implementing for many decades. But they've just kicked it up a notch and they've become more overt about it. Let me give you an example. Biden, about a month and a half ago, gave a speech in front of the birthplace of the Constitution, of the Declaration of Independence, Independence Hall in Philadelphia. And the best way to describe his speech was a speech of hate. There he was, with Independence Hall bathed in blood red, Marines on the sides, and flags, and him clenching his fist, screaming hysterically, reminiscent of Mussolini, the fascist dictator in Italy during the 30s and 40s. Mussolini was called Il Duce. I called this speech that was hate-filled and targeted and alienated tens of millions of peaceful American citizens as Il Demente, as he was acting out in Il Duce's fashion. Il Demente's Inferno, Inferno being from Dante's Inferno, the 14th century poem about a walk through hell. That speech was a walk through hell because it was hate filled. That speech was the polar opposite of what that building behind him, Independence Hall, was all about. That was not an accident that occurred. That, they were telling you, they paraded their demented globalist puppet in front of the home of the Constitution to spew his hate and freedom-stripping agenda. That was not a coincidence. Because when all else fails, subvert the Constitution. And that's what that speech was all about. Since that speech, conservatives have been targets of political violence since Biden's MAGA Republican speech. This is from Jack Phillips from the Epoch Times. There have been reports of high-profile acts of political violence against Republicans and conservatives since Biden's controversial MAGA Republican speech. Quote, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic, end quote, he screamed in front of Independence Hall. But the intended effect of that speech to alienate people, target people, to put everyone in fear, typical globalist playbook, did not work. People started speaking up. I can tell you outside that window, the biggest zealot in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, the biggest zealots were coming up to me saying, you know, you're right about this guy. You've been right about this guy from the very beginning, and we were wrong. Really? What woke you up? Dave, you had to have seen that speech in front of Independence Hall. Dave, that was off the rails. Dave, I can't support that. No, you can't if you love this country and if you love freedom. To the point where Tulsi Gabbard, and we've talked about her before, former Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii, she says a lot of great things, but she has a troubled past that yet has to be addressed, that needs to. Remember, we've given that presentation. If you haven't seen it, it's on this platform, still there for some reason, where I talk about, they haven't taken it down, sheepdogs. There are sheeple, there are sheepdogs like us, and then there are wolves in sheep's clothing. We cannot be deceived by the wolves in sheep's clothing. So Tulsi Gabbard has a troubled past in the sense that she was affiliated with the World Economic Forum Young Leaders Group. Tulsi Gabbard sat on and was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Joe Biden in the 2020 election for president after she dropped out. See, these three things need to be addressed at a minimum before we can really consider her a sheepdog for freedom. Because those three are very troubling. And we need answers. That doesn't mean we can't listen to her and appreciate what she says. But Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. She needs to verify why she is now speaking against what the Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum and Joe Biden were and are about. What made her change her mind to the point where she's saying things like, I can no longer remain in today's Democrat Party that is now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness who divide us by radicalizing every issue and stoke white and anti-white racism, actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms, are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, demonize the police and protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, believe in open borders, weaponize the national security state to go after political opponents, and above all, dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. I believe in a government that is of, by, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government of, by, and for the powerful elite. I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that so-called woke Democrat Party ideologues are taking our country, I invite you to join me. Gabbard did not declare herself a Republican, despite sharing many of the views of the anti-interventionist America First wing of the GOP. So the first question is, what took you so long, Gabby? 2, what's your current position on the Council on Foreign Relations and World Economic Forum and your Joe Biden endorsement? Come on, fess up. Tell us. What changed your mind? Because you were a member of all that. So we welcome her to the freedom movement, but Gab, are you a wolf in sheep's clothing? Or are you a sheepdog like us? We're watching. But until she addresses the CFR issue, the WEF issue, when she changed, why she changed, when she was a card-carrying member of those, and actively involved, and about the Biden endorsement, I think we have to, well, good words, Tulsi, but hey, come on. Come clean. Until then, okay, they're words. Her actions before were troubling. But it's the Constitution that's the key here. Rand Paul, Senate just rejected my attempt to reaffirm the Constitution. If you don't think what I told you was correct, listen to this. This is from Summit News. Senator Rand Paul warned that the Senate shockingly rejected his efforts to reaffirm the Constitution as far as declarations of war go, noting that NATO does not have the authority to supersede Congress in the United States. Paul proposed an amendment that would emphasize only the U.S. Congress has the right to declare war under the Constitution. However, it was immediately rejected by the committee. And the concern is we are falling into a police state. All one has to do is look at the FBI's actions of late. But there's another sinister component here in law enforcement in our country we need to be aware of. We support the police. Boy, we support the police. On the other hand, how about this? Do you support the Chinese police in our country or around the world? What? Where is that stated in the Constitution that a foreign country can set up police locations in the United States? It's not. China has set up dozens of unofficial police stations around the world, including the United States. The Chinese Communist Party has opened dozens, this is from Zero Hedge, dozens of unofficial police stations around the world, including at least 3 in Toronto, Canada, according to a report from the human rights NGO, non-governmental organization, Safeguard Defenders. The report claims that China has been engaging in long-arm policing around the world in what has been dubbed the 110 overseas police stations, named after the police emergency number in China, 110. The report has identified 54 Chinese overseas police stations spanning 30 countries, which are under the jurisdiction of 2 local police services in China. Yeah, I call that very unconstitutional, wouldn't you? I would. And, one of the things that the Syndicate loves to do is criminally undermine our country and the Constitution. How about this? 5 IRS employees charged with stealing COVID relief funds to finance lavish lifestyles, including trips to Las Vegas and Gucci purchases. Wow. In fact, what the IRS it was not in the Constitution to begin with. It was 1913 that the IRS came into being under the same entity when the Federal Reserve came into being, right? It's a bad year, 1913. Just thank Woodrow Wilson, globalist hack, for that. Meanwhile, these COVID relief funds, where exactly in the Constitution does it say that the government can allocate billions and billions of dollars and drive the economy into a inflationary state in so doing? You're hard-pressed to find that. But we now got government employees ripping off that part of the system, too. 5 current or former IRS employees in Tennessee and Mississippi fraudulently received thousands of dollars in COVID relief funds to finance lavish lifestyles, according to the Department of Justice. 5 suspects allegedly submitted bogus loan applications to the Paycheck Protection Program, an economic injury disaster loan program. in an effort to gain over $1 million in funding. They use the loan funds to finance their extravagant lifestyles, such as buying new cars, luxury goods, and personal travel, including trips to Las Vegas, according to court documents. And then there is what's happening at our border with illegal immigration. Look, our country's laws, that's based on the Constitution, provide for legal immigration. But legal immigration does not equal illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is by its name criminal. But the Syndicate does not want you to enforce the criminal code because it helps them to undermine the Constitution. And no better place evident of this is what's happening with our borders in illegal immigration. Biden's policies cause surge in unaccompanied minors and greater chance of child trafficking, and not one Democrat globalist has said a thing about it. And the other thing that bothers me is the Republicans. They are controlled opposition at best. There's one political party in Washington, as I've told you for 12 years since I started the radio show Operation Freedom, the Republicrats. They're all owned and operated by a criminal syndicate. 99% of them in our federal legislature, state legislatures, and local localities are owned and operated by a syndicate, and they're not there to do the right thing for the Constitution, for freedom, for liberty, but for who owns them. And this is a good example of who owns them. The syndicate that makes more money off of human trafficking than they do drug trafficking, which is also prevalent at the border, along with weapons trafficking. In October 2020, the number of minors crossing into the United States unaccompanied was 1,929. That's 1,929 too many, but still. Less than 2 years later, there are now 20,339 unaccompanied minors crossing into the United States. That's over 1,000% increase from when Trump was in charge. Is that a coincidence? No. It's part of overrunning our society and overrunning the Constitution. The problem is only getting worse. The massive increase is because Biden lowered the standards for selecting an adult sponsor for the children. Among other things, sponsors no longer have to get fingerprinted to claim a child from Border Patrol custody. The careless change was made in order to get more children processed and released to make room for the countless more that will be coming. When you consider the shockingly high number of sex assaults that happen to illegal border crossers, especially children, and the allegations surrounding the unqualified employees who are responsible for looking after them, it's almost as if Biden is endorsing the sex trafficking of minors. Yes, he is. I can assure you sex trafficking was not written as a component of the Constitution. U.S. border arrests of migrants with criminal histories up 350%. And then they're being released into our country. This is about the takedown of our country. This is willful. This is not incompetence. This is willful. And to take down our country, they have to subvert the Constitution. Fact. You have a choice. You can either keep going along with this, or you can peacefully protest and speak out and speak up and network this information that 95% of your neighbors and family and friends are unaware of. That's what this platform's about. That's what DaveJanda's about. .com. DaveJanda.com. Tremendous amount of free public information. Outstanding subscription information that is very in-depth and puts you months, if not years, ahead of the curve for 30 cents a day. Become a member of our Freedom family. And then network that information to anyone and everyone you know. The Freedom Beacon of Light and Truth is always on for you at DaveJanda.com 24/7. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.